Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Parent Teacher Organization Conference Virtual BOE Candidate Forum, and for giving up your time to be with us this evening. We are so excited to hear from the 4 participants who are running for the Board of Ed this year. There are 3 seats open for a 3-year term. My name is Sherry Mahfouz, and I have 3 children, one who graduated from Millburn High School in the spring, as well as 2 current high schoolers. I have been in this district since they were all in the pre-K program. I've been actively involved in the school district and worn many hats for many, many years, and now I'm the co-president of the PTOC. There are 3 candidates on the ballot and 1 write-in participant that I would like to introduce at this time. They are Jennifer Bhathena, Kris Heinrichs, Cynthia Longley Richards, and Viswa Reddy. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have compiled the questions that have been submitted from the public and have picked out of the hat the order in which the participants will respond. I would like to introduce at this time my PTOC co-president, Andrea Spar, who will be co-hosting this event tonight, along with our moderator, John Westfeld Kwong. Also, I'd like to thank our behind-the-scenes support, Katie Dussault and Gwen Jonas. Andrea, take it away.
So I am honored to introduce tonight's moderator, John Westfald Kwong. John was unanimously appointed to the Board of Education in April 2013, then elected to a 3-year term from 2014 through 2016. In January 2019, he was unanimously appointed to fill a 1-year vacant seat. During those times, he served as the 2015 Board of Ed president, as well as chairing key committees at various points of his tenure, including finance, property, policy, and negotiations. We're very happy that he has once again offered to help us moderate this event. To you, John.
Thank you, Sherry Mahfouz, Andrea Spar, and to Millburn's Parent Teacher Organization Conference members for your leadership and service to the community. We would like to welcome 4 Millburn Board of Education candidates to this evening's forum and appreciate each of your willingness to serve. As you know, BOE positions are nonpartisan and unpaid. This year's, as Sherry mentioned, voters may vote for up to 3 candidates. 3 of the candidates are on the ballot, and we have 1 write-in candidate this evening. As a reminder to our viewers, per New Jersey state law outlining Code of Ethics and New Jersey School Boards Association, the key roles for Board of Education members are policy planning through both budget and curriculum, and their approval of that, oversight of the superintendent, and oversight of the superintendent. BOE members also represent the public during collective bargaining, during contract negotiations, and serve as communication conduit between the community and the school system. To begin, each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to provide an opening statement. We have asked them to include strengths they are bringing to the table to best represent all students enrolled in Millburn's public schools. The order has been drawn from a hat, and it will be as follows: Cynthia Longley Richards, Kris Heinrichs, Viswa Reddy, and Jennifer Bhathena. We will rotate who will speak first after each question, so everyone will have the ability to answer first. We'll be using a timer app to keep everything on track. This app will signal that there is 10 seconds remaining, and then it will sound when time is up. Cynthia, you're first. Please provide us with your 90-second opening statement.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the PTOC for including me in this forum tonight. My name is Cynthia Longley Richards, and I'm a professional musician, music educator, and mental health professional, as well as a mom to a 7th and a 3rd grader at Millburn Middle and South Mountain Schools. I previously was a music teacher in the district for 4 years. I'm the music teacher and music therapist at the Northwest Essex Community Healthcare Network, serving children and adults. I have a private cello studio on Millburn Avenue and have graduated cellists for the past 25 plus years. I am the right candidate for the job. On our Board of Education, we have professionals and parents who work in business, law, finance, but I am the only voice that knows the perspective of both parent and educator. I can help unlock this potential because students win when parents and teachers work together. I will be the best advocate for our students and families. Not only do I have the unique perspective of teaching in this district and others, I am a parent of a student with an IEP. So I know the laws and the language that educators use, and I will work to support all students in the Millburn Public Schools. I had planned to run for Board of Ed next year, but decided to run now when I found out that the race was uncontested. Parents deserve a choice. Lastly, as a resident since 2015, a childhood resident of Maplewood and of family legacy, my siblings and my father graduated from Millburn High School, my father in 1938. I care about our schools and every student in them. I have the knowledge and expertise to continue the excellence of the Millburn Public Schools. Please write me in for Millburn Board of Education.
Thank you. Kris, you're next up.
Thank you, PTOC, for hosting this event. Thank you, John, for moderating. And thank you to the parents who are taking time to be part of these important discussions. I'm Kris Heinrichs. I have 3 daughters, one in 10th grade, one in 6th grade, and one in 4th grade. I've been in this district for 10 years and have experienced all levels of schools in our district. Professionally, I was a finance executive or chief financial officer at online technology companies. I was responsible for many functions, including finance, accounting, strategic planning and budgeting, human resources, and legal. I was a critical decision maker for these companies and had extensive interactions with the board of directors. So I understand the functions of boards and how they can operate effectively. My companies operated globally, enabling me to develop a deep appreciation for various cultures. In all these roles, I had to work across functions with a variety of individuals to build consensus and achieve outcomes that benefited the organization. During this time, I was also a board member at a non-for-profit that promoted sexual assault prevention on college campuses. Since retiring in 2018, I've focused on helping my kids and volunteering. I've been on the board of the Deerfield PTO for 3 years, serving as treasurer. This year, I joined the middle school board, PTO board, also serving as treasurer. Additionally, I've coached rec soccer and basketball. I'm running for the Board of Education as I believe that my experience and skills will allow me to be an effective board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Viswa. We'll give Viswa a couple more seconds as we unmute him.
Thank you, John.
There we go. Sure.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for joining this evening, everyone. I'm Viswa Reddy. My wife and I have been in the town for over a dozen years. We have 2 children, both of them in middle school. I have a mini Labradoodle at home. I've been an engaged volunteer in the community through the 10+ years. My kids have been in school. I've led the fellow junior program at Deerfield, coached STEM Fest and Odyssey of Mind teams. I'm an adult leader in Scouts and in the past with the Cub Scouts. Professionally, I'm a senior director at FIH Foxconn. I've been in leading products at high-tech companies for over 2 decades now. Among the products that I launched are 3 world-first products, the latest of which enable 5G broadband. These successes were made possible by my innate ability to handle uncertainty with a very data-driven approach and patiently navigating complex organizational challenges. I like our school board that has many challenges that we've seen over the last few years. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, master's degree from Johns Hopkins, MBA degree from Dartmouth. I've attended, obviously, world-class institutions where I've had first-hand experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the PTOC members for hosting, and a big thanks to everyone who's joined us tonight. I'm Jennifer Bhathena, and like many folks I know, my husband and I moved to Millburn with our daughters for its vibrant community and amazing public schools. I feel compelled to serve to ensure that our schools continue on this amazing path they are on, but also to support the students and their parents in their journey of academic, social, and athletic enrichment. After completing a degree in fine arts and town planning, I came to New Jersey in 1996 when I went back to school. I graduated with honors in science, mathematics, and economics, and I've joined an investment bank where I have used my analytical, organizational, management skills and worked my way to senior executive. At work, I often have to negotiate and find the middle ground between stakeholders, and I believe that is my strength that will be most useful on the board. At home, as a parent, I feel the same challenges as most parents in the community. Therefore, when elected, I will use my skills to help our schools with budget planning and allocations to ensure the appropriate school services, programs, infrastructure, and resources are funded, provide our parents, students, and educators an equal voice when discussing complex topics, and facilitating finding a middle ground. Support our students in a journey towards academic curiosity, keeping their mental and physical well-being a top priority, and having appropriate staffing for special ed and advanced placement classes so that more students can have access to them. I have the right skills and the time, and importantly, the desire to serve on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you to everyone that submitted questions from the public for the forum. In order to cover the most issues, we have consolidated some of the questions, but have tried our best to get through all of the questions that were submitted, and we will do our best to cover as many topics as possible. For this next portion, candidates will have 90 seconds to respond, and then an additional 60 seconds for further clarification after everyone has had their 90 seconds. We very much appreciate that the candidates have remained focused on letting the public know about their unique value that each would bring to the board, and that they're remaining respectful towards their potential future Board of Education colleagues. Kris, you're going to be up first for this question. I'll say it slowly. If y'all need clarification, please just let me know. Many of these questions are two-parters. So first question, in your own words, please share what you feel the role of a Board of Education member is and why you feel you are uniquely qualified for the role. What qualities will enable you to effectively work with other Board of Education members, the superintendent, and other district professionals? Also, name one Board of Education committee that you think your background would add value to.
That was 3 parts, right?
Yes, it's a 3-part question.
Okay,
so what you bring to the board, how will you work well with others, and what would be one committee on the board that you would bring additional value to?
Great, thank you, John. Good question, and happy to lead off and go first. So the board is a critical function. It's a conduit of information from the administration to the parents and the public, and from the parents back to the administration. I think I'll be very good at doing this. That's what I've done in most of my corporate career. Being a corporate executive, I was constantly dealing with our partners, understanding their needs, bringing it back to the organization and processing that through. That's the most important role that we have, is communication. Also, obviously, there's decision making. Throughout my years of corporate experience, we faced many challenges, and I was always in the room when the critical decisions were being made. So I feel like I've been very tested over 20 years. Throughout all these situations, my personal opinion has had very little to do with what the ultimate decisions were coming out. I'm data driven. I know what questions to ask, how to get the data, how to interpret it, how to distill it down to what really matters, and then how to build consensus around coming to a decision. Always, we executives, it's very similar to a board, would get in the room, have a strong discussion, many different opinions were voiced in those meetings, we'd come to a decision, and then we'd step out and execute together. I've used all my time, so skipping to the third is, I obviously think finance would be a good committee for me. I want to think about the long-term
planning. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And the good news is we'll have 60 seconds for anything you've missed, or, and this is for all of you, or just anything that you want to add on after hearing from the others. Viswa, you're next.
John, let me start with the first question. The function of the board itself, as a board, the board itself will be responsible for setting policy, really to think of a corporate board. You're part of the corporate board working with the CEO, but obviously there are differences with the corporation, right? But that's how I see the board working. Kris has talked about a lot of other detailed activities, but looking at just my background, I've worked all my life with working with complex organizations, getting things done in that kind of complex organizations, and dealing with uncertainty, using data to drive those decisions. And that's something that I can bring to the table. I've done that very successfully over the last couple of decades in a corporate arena. Sorry, the third question you had, if you could remind me.
Is the Board of Education Committee that you think
Yes.
you would provide most value to?
Yes, thank you. So I think communications is one thing that I'm really passionate about in how the school is communicating right now. John, and what I would like to see, there's a lot of communication, but it's not proactive, it's not clear, it's not transparent. All of those three at any given time, right? That's something that I hope I can help with.
All right, thank you. Jennifer.
Okay, so let me see if I got this right. The role of the board is to set, make, repeal or amend policies, planning, budget allocations, voting on budget and curriculum, and the big piece of it is the oversight of the superintendent. As mentioned in the opening statement, at work I work with lots of stakeholders, and in this case, I am one of the stakeholders. So this is kind of personal to me. As parents, we may not necessarily see eye to eye on every topic, but what I can bring to the table is being collaborative between the educators, what the educators want, what the students want, and what the parents want. Trying to respectfully discuss complex topics and find that middle ground. That's something I do at work on a daily basis. Another thing I can bring to the table at my background in science, mathematics, statistics, analysis, data. I work a lot with data, and one of the things that I can really bring value is analyzing how we look at information, process it, and put it into perspective. And obviously working very closely with the superintendent to collaborate with her and making sure that the superintendent meets the goals that she has set out for herself.
All right, thank you. Cynthia.
Okay, thank you so much. Obviously, I think they've outlined many of the things. Obviously, we know that the board is there to approve curriculum, not write curriculum. We write and review policy. We work on the budgets and the financials. We oversee the superintendent. But we also have a code of ethics on the board that is written by the New Jersey School Board Association. So those things are all, this is very important to know as a board member that we do have sort of a code of practice. So very committed to that. I definitely know many of the parties involved on both sides at this point. So I really feel like I'll be a very good person to work with both sides, both the administration, the teachers, the families, the students. I kind of just have a line in with all of them, having worked in the district and knowing a lot of the families and the students, as well as the staff and the administration. And if there was one committee that I would be on, it would be the program committee and overseeing the curriculum, because as a teacher, I know the language, I know the laws, I know the standards, I know the curriculum and how it's implemented in our district. The program committee will be a key thing because I know that they are working on a performing arts initiative, comparing our performing arts programs with other like districts. I know this all very intimately. So that is my answer.
All right, Thank you. And now for each of you, we have 60 seconds each for any follow-up points that you would like to make on this question.
Go ahead.
All right, Kris.
Thank you. I always have more to add. So I think it's important you brought up this issue of governance structure, and you kind of referenced what committees you would be on. From my understanding of how the Board of Education operates, most of the work is actually done in the subcommittees, and that work is brought forward for the full board to consider. So being able to operate on those committees is very important. And that's what I've done with most of my career. My companies were always very democratic. We had long, ongoing committees that operated the company. We also had special committees that would come together and do a specific project. I've chaired these committees. I've participated on dozens of them. I know how to work with all types of people to be effective in those committee meetings. They can often be conversations going around in circles. You need someone who can take control of these committees and drive towards a purpose. I've done that effectively for all of my career.
All right, thank you. Viswa.
Piggybacking on Kris and John, when you work on complex products with multiple organizations, you are going into like sub meetings with select individuals, and that's a lot of what the board does, and having that experience a priori in my case, that is going to be a big asset going into this Board of Ed meeting, Board of Ed position. Outside of the communication committee, John, a couple of other committees I think that I would be interested in would be the program committee and the township committee. Again, two topics that are close to my heart in terms of allowing more access to students for the accelerated and AP programs, and also working more with other organizations like the township committee to further the capabilities of the school.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Just kind of to wrap up the last question, what committee I would be most suitable for. Obviously, with my background in data, I think I could certainly serve in the Finance and Budget Committee. I would be very interested to also be part of the Program and Curriculum Committee to help with how we implement what is mandated at the state level, how we implement it at a district level. So that would be two that I think I would my skills would complement, and I would be able to do a great job.
All right, thank you. Cynthia.
So yeah, one of the other things we haven't really talked about are the student liaison committees. And so again, I'm very well poised to work with, I've already worked with a lot of students, to work with them, and also with community, working with the community and catching like the pulse of the community. I also think, it's true, Viswa, you said about the town council, and I do know that the board does consult with the town council. I'm just really very good at communications and working with people, trying to find win-win solutions. So that is basically what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you. We will now move on to question number 2. Viswa, you're going to be first on this one. Again, a couple parts to it. So if you have any clarification, let me know. So here's the question. What are your thoughts regarding your role in implementing policies and regulations for classroom consistency as it pertains to use of Google Classroom, homework, due dates, deadlines, and assessments for students in the same grade in elementary school or in the same course in middle school and high school? How can we ensure some uniformity? Also, how can we support teachers in these basic functions? So again, it's a 3-part question in terms of policies and regulations, in terms of classroom activities, uniformity, and it circles back to uniformity and supporting teachers in those functions.
Sorry, John, I thought I heard the only 2 parts, uniformity and supporting teachers. What is the third part?
Well, the third part, the first part of the question is similar in terms of just it listed out. And it's a reminder that it's how the board supports it through policies and regulations. So how would the board be supported through policies and regulations for those classroom consistencies, elementary school level, and in the high school and middle school for the different classes?
Okay, got it. John, thank you for that.
Sure.
Clarification. So, I would separate these into two different topics, John. One is just standardization of homework and the due dates and so on, and then use of technology in general, right? I think we made in the last year and a half, thanks to Ed Foundation and other efforts, we made great progress in terms of getting more technology into the schools with the virtual seat and so on. I think that's something that we should encourage the teachers to continue to use. There are other uses when kids are sick, or they have other like surgery and recovering, those kind of things that that would be helpful, and we need to really encourage that and the teachers to do that. In terms of homework due dates, I definitely have seen that variation, John, across different classes, different within the same grade, and different subjects, right? I think that goes back to what should be the homework policy really. I think it has to be catered to the student. We have to, where possible, we should use things like Excel that can modulate to the student need. It's some students need more practice, others less. And we should use the tools that we have at hand to be able to standardize to the student.
Thank you. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you. And we'll have, again, we'll have 60 more seconds for follow-up comments. Jennifer, you're next on this question.
So I think consistency and uniformity between classes is really important. Oftentimes, you don't want to hear that two students in the same grade, one has an awesome teacher and is learning really well, one is struggling. So I think we need to make sure that the students are the classrooms and the education imparted is consistent. Collaboration between teachers within the same class is also important. For example, when you have something in middle school or high school where a single student has 6 teachers, I think it's important that the teachers all understand what that one single student is getting from all directions. For example, homework, right? We have some teachers who give no homework, some teachers who give a lot of homework, and occasionally there'll be days when all the teachers give a lot of homework and you have students staying up till 11 o'clock in the night. So these are the kind of things that I think, making it more consistent, making it more collaborative. On the technology aspect, I think our school is definitely miles ahead in terms of the tech that we have and our students have access to. It served really well when we had to close down schools, and I think that what goes hand in hand with technology is, I think I'm running out of time, but I think we need to give our students tech grades.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And the good news is 60 more seconds later. Cynthia.
Alrighty, thank you so much. So, this comes down to policies and the policy committee and how things are written for standardizing these practices in the classroom. The homework policy is online. I remember as a teacher getting that homework policy and reading it and saying, bound to it, there are no homework nights. And so, just addressing the homework issue, I know that the board has made a lot of steps trying to standardize that already. So I'm hoping that, more and more teachers are going to be getting on board. The uniformity of the classroom operations, all of the teachers now use Google Classroom. We all know about how to post and when you can post and what times you need to post. So, I think just having those policies in place made it much clearer for the teachers, honestly, and that just gave them that support. It did for me, I know. I don't know, there was Kyle Arlington several years ago did an assessment framework for the teachers where they worked on standardizing assessments throughout the district. So I'm pretty sure Kate Ziskin has probably taken that on now. and worked with that as well. But yeah, so I think basically it's the policy, and that's what that's our role as the board, is to make sure that those policies are being implemented and that our teachers and students are supported through them.
All right, thank you. Kris.
Yes, this is a very important issue, having consistency on the classrooms. And I would definitely think about it different for levels. I would say it's more important the higher level of school. So the high school, I want it to be very consistent. Elementary school, particularly in classroom operations, I'd rather allow for a little more flexibility. And I think that'll be an important part of this. Obviously, the board can write a perfect policy, but how that policy is implemented is critical. And I also don't want to write so many policies and be so consistent where the teachers are turning into robots. There's got to be room for the teacher to bring their personality and what inspires them and teach that to the students. That is so important if we want to continue to have the best teachers working for us. So I'm a big believer in focus groups. I know we do some of those. Many times it's not the board who should be doing those all the time. The administrators run the schools. So getting the teachers together to make sure they have input in the policy, getting the teachers together to make sure they standardize the tests, understanding how the classrooms are actually operating and how these policies are actually being implemented. And then, of course, getting feedback from the students will be most important to understand how consistent, how they are complying with these rules and understanding them. And I think all the candidates said technology. It's been the great equalizer. There's lots of online tools that automatically increases the consistency. So the more we can leverage that, I think the better we'll be able to achieve this goal.
All right, thank you. Andrew, I'll give you a second to set up for our 60.
I'm good.
Oh, well done.
Trying to get better at this.
Yeah, awesome. Viswa, you're up. 60 more seconds.
Yeah, so going back to the technology issue, John, and I think for some of the teachers, I think they definitely need help in using that. And, some of the tools, some teachers are really, really good at that. So I think the board, in addition to framing policies that standardize, I think you have to provide training opportunities for the teachers to be able to do that. I know every year the school board does approve the training opportunities, but we should get feedback from the teachers, like Kris was suggesting, as to what areas need help. Maybe even have teachers help other teachers within the same grade or across the grades to be able to teach better using those tools.
All right, thank you. Jennifer.
Okay, so going back to the last point I was making about technology. So I wonder if there's a way we can leverage technology. So one of the things as a parent, I would like to see done, so maybe as a board member, I'd like to get it done. So leverage technology so that when children have to travel or they're unwell or they miss a class because of sports, they don't miss a beat in that class. So maybe a way that they can miss a class but yet be caught up really fast. So I think we could do better there. And then the flip side of technology, I'm hoping that teachers are also looking, especially in the elementary and the middle school, teachers are looking for ways to encourage children to take a tech break and work with your hands as well. I think there's value in projects, in building things, even in mathematics, to kind of see things outside of just a screen. So I think those are the kind of things that I would try to see where I can add value there.
Right, thank you. Cynthia.
All right. Something we didn't really talk about was that the district did make, and I'm assuming that was sort of board driven and superintendent driven, more space for teacher professional development and continuing education. So, making those opportunities really matters. And I mean, I can say personally, during the pandemic, learning all of the technology that we had to learn was invaluable to everything, to doing Zoom meetings like this, for example. So, the more that teachers know, the better they can do for our students, the better that they can do for themselves, for their classes, for their knowledge, the better that they're going to be able to do that for their students. And, I think there needs to just be a very good community connection between the students, the families, the teachers, and the board. And I am one of those open communication kind of people. So would definitely make sure that was happening on the board level.
Thank you. And Kris.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think we've hit on a lot of the same topics. Policy is the main vehicle of the board. I would assume that every time a new policy comes down, a lot of teachers kind of like roll their eyes. We could drown teachers in policy. So I think the one thing we can do is be very clear and concise. Putting out a 60-page program around, physical education, sexual education, all that, it's overwhelming. How are teachers supposed to digest all of this? So the more concise and crisp we can be will be key. And as Cynthia was saying, professional development is key. How do we get these teachers comfortable with the new policies, make them understand why it's important and how it can benefit them and their students? Spending the time to do that, having less policies and driving them through is better than just lumping on policy after policy.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. We're on to question number 3. Jennifer, you're going to be first on this question. And for the public, I think you all have figured it out, but the board members are hearing all of these, the board candidates are hearing all of these questions for the first time in general tonight. So, and if they've heard them before, it's because perhaps a friend submitted one of these, but in general, these are new for everyone. So thank you all for your willingness to take on these questions. So Jennifer, on the question is, on some of the candidate Board of Ed profiles, there is mention of a need for additional transparency from the Board of Education. Do you feel that is indeed correct? Depending on your answer, if yes, can you please cite a specific example where the board was transparent? Or if no and not transparent, explain how you might have handled the situation differently or the same.
So I think it's tough. I think it's a hard job to do what the board does. There is a board meeting once every 2 weeks. I think there is an open forum during that time. Every time that I've attended it, I've been surprised at just the amount of information that I've just collected from that. So I think there's enough transparency for most cases. I think some of the things I would say the parents do feel like they don't, as a parent, they might feel like they got, something surprised them. For example, some of these standards that are, the state has outlined for the new health and physical ed curriculum. I think that is something that the parents do feel like they're not getting adequate information fast enough. And I know that there's a disconnect because I don't think the board is doing something intentionally, but I think so. That would be a gap that I'd like to bridge. Maybe having more pertinent topics covered up front during the Board of Ed meetings so that parents who don't have the time to sit through the 2 hours can get in and get out, get the information faster. But yeah, I think that would be one of the things I would do.
All right, thank you. Cynthia.
Okay, I'm like furiously scribbling down notes for myself. Okay, here we go. So there, luckily now with technology, the live streams are available of the board meetings. There are emails available. The minutes are available online. Miller Mail, talks about the meetings every time. There's certain things, like some things are confidential for the board. We have to go by the Board of Ethics, so those things can't be transparent. And certain things only the president can speak to, so or the chair of the board can only speak to. So the one thing, and I think this would go a long way for our town, there are no minutes kept of the meetings between the town council and the Board of Ed. They exist. They do meet with the town council. And I think that that would go a long way to just alleviate some of the fears that people are having, just to see what's actually happening when the Board of Ed meets with the town council. So that's just a major thing I think can really increase the transparency of the board and the operations of the board.
All right. Thank you. Kris, you're next.
Transparency is one of the most difficult things to achieve. And it's not that I have a specific example of where the board didn't do that. I think in general, they are very transparent. I think the issue becomes with the volume of information and the level of activity that is going on. There is so much going on that the board does and has to consider. Parents are extremely busy with their work, their kids' activities, helping with homework. The last thing they probably want to do is listen to a 2-hour board meeting in order to get that information. So when I referenced transparency in my platform, it was, we need to figure out how to distill down this information and make it digestible to parents so they get the right information at the right time, or they know where to go to find that information when they need it. That is very hard. I have lots of experience with this in my corporate environment. Several of the companies I worked for were public. So you have to file documents with the SEC, you have to do investor calls. There's always a balance of how much information you put out there, because too much information is worse than no information at all sometimes, because people just can't make sense of it. So how do we strike that right balance is what I'd like to work on and achieve.
All right. Thank you. Viswa.
John, so like the other candidates have spoken, there's a lot of things that board does, and every meeting being 2 hours does not help, in addition to the subcommittee work and all that and stuff. I think where it would make a big difference for all the parents, students of the school district is digitization, putting everything online. Yes, there are meeting minutes of the board, but if you actually read the meeting minutes and compare that to when you actually show up to the meeting, there are huge gaps, right? Anybody in the audience can go now to the Board of Ed meeting website. There are meeting minutes. Unless you go through the live stream and do minute by minute, you're never going to get that just from the minutes. Parents are busy. We all have busy lives, right? And I think that's where digitization would help. Any important announcement needs to be digitized, be placed on the board website. And that's something that I hope the board can fix. Certainly that's something that I would look forward to making happen if I get elected.
All right, thank you. So now we're going over to 60-second follow-up comments, starting with Jennifer.
So I think it is our responsibility to provide a voice and intelligence so that the kind of average parent like me can be informed for the important stuff and understand the board's actions and why certain actions were taken or not taken. So I think, as Kris said, it cannot be understated. I think as parents sometimes we do feel overwhelmed with just the sheer volume of information coming at us from the school teachers, from the superintendent. So I think we need to definitely distill that down and attending to busy parents understand how to deliver that information. But also for the parents who take time to come to a board meeting, somehow get maybe structure the board meeting so that some of the more important information can be given to those parents up front as quickly as possible, and maybe have 2 public comment sections where parents can voice their opinions and concerns.
All right, thank you. Cynthia.
All right, so yes, we are inundated with a lot of information. And I mean, how many people read an entire email word for word these days? It's not a lot. However, but one way I think would be a very good idea is the superintendent sends a message every single week. There could just be like a board minute corner, just one little blurb from the board every week. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. This is what our board goals are right now. This is what, this is how you can reach us. These are the links to our meetings. These are the links to the information, something very concise that parents can just see, because really it's so important to be a liaison between the public, the community, even, especially the public that doesn't have kids in the school, the students, families, and the superintendent. So I really think just finding an efficient way to do that would be really a good idea.
Thank you. Kris.
I think we've achieved broad agreement on this topic, and my promise to make the board more efficient, I'm happy to cede my time.
Thank you. Viswa.
John, and one thing I wanted to address is different people find different things important. It's very difficult when you have such a long meeting. What is the most important? What is important to Kris might be not be so important for Cynthia, to Jennifer, right? This is why I think we need to digitize as much as possible, post it and all online. We're all volunteers. I've been on both sides of this equation. We spend time volunteering, but that does not excuse us from that responsibility. We still report to the people that elect us, whether we volunteer our time or not. We still are responsible to communicate with those people comprehensively and clearly.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. We're moving on to the next question. Cynthia, you're going to be first for this question. The question is, please provide further information regarding your volunteer resume. Specifically, what PTO positions have you held in the Millburn School District or in other districts? Or have you done other nonprofit volunteer work that provides further expertise connected to this role?
Thank you for that. So I am always a member of the PTOs at my school. I always try to contribute as much as possible. Being a teacher has been a little bit difficult trying to get to actual meetings and holding roles just because the hours are exactly the same. I am on a school schedule. So, I always stay connected, try to support all of my PTOs as much as possible. And so that's that. This summer, I became the summer swim team, Millburn Summer Swim Team parent manager. So in the summers, I have a little more time, obviously, and also volunteered to work on the Rocktoberfest committee. So I was responsible for, making sure the contracts were out for musicians and working behind the scenes just on everything, for that day. I was there, all day and all night. And and I mean, I'm a musician. I'm performing all over. I did a recital during the pandemic through the Millburn Library. We did it online. So bringing music into people's homes during the pandemic was really important for me while we were all sort of stuck and couldn't go to any of these concerts. And what else? Trying to think. I think, I probably will think of something later on and then I can say it in my 60 seconds at the end.
All right. Thank you. Kris.
One thing I wasn't able to work in was that I actually served in the United States military right after college. And as we have an all volunteer force, I think that's one of the most important forms of volunteering. While I worked in New York City for a number of years at technology companies, I volunteered for the PTO organizations locally here and there, but honestly, my engagement wasn't that much. I did for about a decade serve on the board of a non-for-profit called 1 in 4. Most of that time I was chair of the board. 1 in 4 speaks to a statistic of women at college, how many of them will experience rape or attempted rape. The statistic is old now, but it was a huge problem on college campuses and frankly still is. This organization ran a program to bring that issue to the surface and teach people how to prevent it. Since I retired, I've been much more involved in the PTOs. As I mentioned, I was treasurer of I still am treasurer of the Deerfield PTO for 3 years. volunteering anywhere I can, library duty, lunch duty, whenever there's a shortfall in whatever event we're having, I try to jump in and help out. I'm getting much more involved in the middle school, serving as treasurer there. And certainly with Deerfield, I brought my treasury expertise and I think really helped improve the financial visibility and operations to that organization.
Thank you. Viswa.
Thanks, John. Within the Millburn school system, as my kids went through Deerfield, Washington School, now middle school, I've been in volunteering for activities that at all the schools. Specifically, I led the FLL Junior program for 3 years at the Deerfield, along with the STEM program there. I've been a coach for STEM Fest team. I've been for 2 years, both when my son and daughter were both in Odyssey of the Mind in Washington School. And more recently, I've been adult leader in Group 15 of Scouts. Prior to that, I was an adult leader in Pac 1 of Cub Scout organization for several years. Outside of the Millburn school system, John, I've been a volunteer at Hopkins, both Malmö, Hopkins and Dartmouth. With Hopkins, I've been a business plan judge for a number of years. I've been a part of the Dartmouth Entrepreneur Network Steering Committee for the New York chapter. So it's been a long history of volunteer work, both within the Millburn system and outside.
Right. Thank you. Jennifer.
So I've always enjoyed helping others and volunteering for the community. I started early on tutoring math and science to underprivileged kids in Trenton. When I moved to New Jersey, that's where I live. I then went on to be a math, science, and coding teacher at the Trenton Rescue Mission, where I helped troubled teens and adults who had dropped out of school. Some were ex-prison inmates, so ex-cons, who had dropped out of school, and I helped them get their general equivalency diploma, the GED, so that they could have a second and a better shot at life. During the same time in my life, I also worked with the dance movement therapy organization that helped young students cope with anxiety and stress. Once my first child started going to school, I joined the Montessori School's PTO, and I volunteered in the PTO, and I volunteered in their Friends and Family organization that's similar to the Millburn Ed Foundation here for various tasks, lots of hats for about 6 to 7 years. When we moved to Millburn, I was class mom for 1 year, and I volunteered for lunch duty every chance I get. Through my office, I also participate with Girls Who Code. It's an organization that highlights STEM for young girls, and it's a global organization. So we don't only work with inner city kids in New York or Trenton, but we also work with inner city kids across the globe.
All right, thanks. We'll have 60 more seconds for each of you. Cynthia.
Oh, I almost didn't unmute. Okay. So I did remember. So one of the other recent volunteer things that I did was I volunteered to perform for one of the Common Sense gun law rallies in Summit when they came and sat with all of the senators and speakers that day. I also was just hired as a teacher for the Nikhil Badlani Foundation through the Youth Orchestras of Essex County, which provides lessons for underprivileged kids. So kids who can't afford lessons, they pay for the lessons. And I just taught my first 2 students today, and they came to my house. So I've also, I said I've graduated cellists, but I've also sort of counseled them on, college things and career choices and teachers and the whole process there as well. So, none of that. And I said being a musician most of the time and a teacher kind of sometimes feels like being a volunteer anyway. That's it.
Thank you. Kris.
I think I covered most of it last time. There was, I think, lots of volunteering activities throughout my life that I can't think of now. What I most enjoy that I didn't mention in the last answer was coaching my kids rec teams. I honestly was a coach of last resort. They send out those emails begging, we can't field the teams unless we have coaches. So I just threw my hat in the ring for basketball and soccer, and I actually had a fantastic time. And I hope to continue to do that. I think my youngest daughter, I wanted her to do basketball again, but she's like, Daddy, I'll only do it if you coach. So I feel like I'll be coaching again.
All right, thank you. Viswa.
John, again, I think I've covered most of it, but anybody that has done like Odyssey of Mind coaching, been part of Scouts and helped as an adult leader, would know that that's almost like a job in itself. I definitely loved Odyssey of Mind. Part of it, I think, is something I can definitely relate to this job, where you're not trying to give away the answer to the kids. You're trying to help them get to the answer themselves. And I think there's a lot of that needs to happen as a board member, where you don't necessarily have that kind of power over the school administration, teachers, and so on, given the union contracts that they have. So definitely experience that I hope will be helpful.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Okay, so I think the last part I'm saying is that most recently, about a year or so ago, I became a registered adult at the local Scout PSA, our all-girls Troop 19 Millburn Township Boy Scouts group. So I volunteer there with Scouts. We help with activities and camp outs and things like that. I agree with Kris, his daughter. We want Kris to coach again. My daughters loved when he was a coach, and we did really well. And I wanted to thank Kris for his service in the military.
Right. Thank you. Thank you all. We're moving on to the next question. Kris, you're going to be first on this one. So I'll get it started. With the potential for significantly more households to be built due to Millburn's Fair Share housing settlement agreement, what do you feel could be done to make room for potentially hundreds of new students coming into the school district? What can the BOE do to continue to maintain the quality we always have experienced?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. This is one of the primary reasons I'm running for the board. I understand that enrollment is hard to forecast. I recall before we opened the Washington School, Deerfield was kind of bursting at the seams. I definitely don't want to get into that situation again. In my corporate roles, we spent a lot of time thinking about budgeting not only for the next years, but doing long-term strategic plans. And I know the board has already engaged in many of these exercises. I think I want to double down on those activities and ensure we are properly planning for that. I think the biggest thing we can do is stay close to the township committee. We've mentioned that there aren't minutes of the meetings between those two organizations. I'd like to increase the dialogue, whether it's official or unofficial. We should understand what developments are going on in the town, how long they're going to take, and estimate what the impact or enrollment should be, and start thinking about plans of how we can encounter those. Honestly, I don't know how we'd be able to do that. I will dig into this issue. Like I said, it's one of the primary roles that I'm doing. How do we keep our quality is the most important question, and that's what I want to dig into.
Thank you. Viswa.
So as a product leader, strategic planning is the core function that I have to deal with every day. It's something that you do it once a year. Yes, there is a strategic planning session, but you need to be able to move nimbly to the changing situation. One of the challenges with the current situation is we don't know what the impact is. We know very partial information as to where the developments are going to be. I think you need someone that has gone through that kind of training, has experience in planning and moving nimbly to the changing situation. We need to definitely coordinate with the township committee. We need to have some sort of projection as to how it's going to impact and which school districts, which schools within the district are going to be impacted. Clearly, we need to maintain the student to teacher ratio. That's to ensure quality in the school, but there'll be budget constraints that will come with how the development is going to happen. I don't know how the tax base is going to be. Already we are consuming 50% of the town budget. So a lot of unknowns. I think given my background, that's something that I can deal with.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Right. So I think the township growth is a moving target. I understand that with the fair share housing, this is going to surprise us with a lot more students very quickly. I think it goes back to making sure that we understand where the revenue is going to come from and how we're going to scale. So even if we have that revenue, how can we have the infrastructure in place? How can we have the staffing in place? How can we make sure that the student-teacher ratio, how can we make sure that every student gets that same attention, every kid is represented? So I think that we'd have to dig into it. I'm not privy to those conversations right now because as Cynthia pointed out, we need better transparency on these minutes, that the discussions that happen with the township committee and the school board. But that's something that that's one way that we need to start looking in. Where is the revenue coming up? What are the plans to scale? And how can we help, right? I mean, what has to be done has to be done. The question is, what will we do? What is the solution now? We know what the problem is. And scaling is an important piece of it. You can throw all the money, but can we scale fast enough? And have the people thought about this? Have they done the cost impact analysis? Have they figured out how funds? We're at 100 million is our current budget.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia.
All right. So I actually have a bunch of numbers here. Our enrollment numbers currently are way less than they were even 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, the district did plan ahead. I know the district does meet with the town council. They have planned ahead. I watched a presentation by a student who did this beautiful spreadsheet of the predicted numbers. So I am pretty sure that the board is really has their thumb on the pulse of what is going to be happening. But for example, in 2017, the high school had 1,454 students. In 2021, which was, of course, sort of during the pandemic, we had 1,308, so 1,308. The Washington school in 2018 had 444 students, and in 2021 had 400 students. So the numbers definitely have gone down. Opening the Washington school really was a key to making space in the elementary schools. I can tell you, I've been in classrooms and they're not necessarily full. I know South Mountain oftentimes has trouble filling 3 sections of a grade. So I really do feel that, you know, historically that the Board of Education has taken a proactive approach. And I look forward to continue doing that and keeping that line open with the town council.
Thank you. Kris, follow up, 60 seconds.
I need 1 minute.
No worries.
Sorry.
Well, that's good because I was still muted. So
Okay.
should I start or should I wait?
I think you can stay. We can time you.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure
Cut
where.
me off whenever. 2 additional thoughts. One, the school budget, as most of us think about it, is just an operating budget. There's very little room for capital improvements there. The way new schools get built is bond offerings, right? The township had a successful bond offering a few years ago of $20 million to pay for a bunch of improvements. So I think one key thing we could do is start talking about it now. If we have to build a new school, it would cost this much money. This is what it would mean. So when it actually does come around, there's not a shock to the system, and parents are rightly concerned that their taxes are going to go up or going to have other complications. So I think forecasting that way and starting to talk about it early is key. Secondly, when there's a lot of uncertainty, what we did was scenario plan. Get in a room, brainstorm whatever ideas, however crazy, and plot them out. What if we turn Washington School into an elementary school? What if we build a new middle school? What if we build a new high school? Turn the high school into a middle school? There's endless variation. So you don't do a million of them, but you pick the most likely, you plan those out, and however enrollment turns out, you have something close.
Thank you.
Thank you. Viswa.
John, can you confirm if you can hear me, because my screen is frozen all of a sudden?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, John, and I agree with a lot of what Kris is saying. That's, you need to scenario plan. The key thing here is there are a lot of unknowns. By that I mean we don't know how many of the new development, new development people coming into new developments will have kids. What age those kids will be. So all we could do right now is scenario plan and figure out what to do as things develop. Township committee itself, you can see from the election campaign, there are competing views of how to go about it. I think the job of Board of Ed comes a little bit behind, but we need to be really in tight sync with the township committee to be able to pull this off. And the next 2-3 years would be a key part of the transition to make sure that we build and continue to maintain the standards that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer.
So I think just to finish my last thought, just make sure that whoever is leading this effort right now has done the cost impact analysis and figured out where the funds are coming from and how, and scenario analysis, as Kris and Viswa pointed out. One thing we need to be careful is citing correlation to causation. Yes, our school numbers are down, but we are losing students to private schools as well. That's happening in the high schools, it's happening in middle schools. The reason for that is, the level of stress the students are in, but also quality of education might be one of the concerns. And adding more students to that could impact that. So that's something we need to be very careful that, seeing the numbers go down isn't necessarily a good thing. And we need to make sure that the existing students are represented first, and then we need to accommodate the students coming in as well.
Thank you. Cynthia.
Okay, so yes, I was also going to mention that we do have a significant number of students that leave every year for private school, especially between like 5th grade and the middle school, and then again going into the high school, because those are the big years for acceptances, the middle and high school. But the fact is that the Upton didn't produce as many students as was predicted. There are less students now. That could always change. And we don't really know, these developments aren't built. I mean, and they are kind of still in litigation. We don't know when this is going to happen. So, this may or may not even happen during our 3-year term being there. And I think that it would be important then to look at all options and exhaust all options before spending taxpayer money on, new facilities again or upgrades or whatever. So I know that there is a process for that. And, hopefully we can make it, as smooth as possible. Keep the lines of communication open with the town council.
Right. Thank you. Thank you all. We're on to our next question. Viswa, you're going to be first on this one. It's longer. It's kind of still a one-parter, not a two-parter, but there's a good amount to it. So we'll get started on it. It is rare, but sometimes teachers and staff do not follow the rules or guidelines that are set up by the district. For example, a teacher may not follow guidelines for no homework nights or delay handing assessments or quizzes back to students for so long that the next one comes before the student receives the last one. A teacher may occasionally post a homework assignment so late that a student is caught off guard in class for the next day. These situations can add to student stress. Some parents and students are so worried about retaliation that they do not say anything and nothing is done to fix the problem. Most likely, the teacher is misinterpreting the rule or guideline and not doing anything intentionally nefarious. Can you suggest a way that parents can share their feedback with school or district, or anonymously or in some other way?
John, sorry, I'm literally flying blind. I can't see the screen. So pardon me if I go over. So let me confirm the question. Like, it's basically, what do we do to if the teachers are not following guidelines, and what kind of how do we go about getting good feedback from students and parents in such a situation?
Yes, and I think the one other element of the question is, are there other ways that parents or students can share anonymously or in some other feedback than the current way, in terms of what the last part of the question?
Got it. So, John, and quite honestly, I hope that this is not something that's happening often. But if I think in order to guard against something like that, it definitely anonymous feedback tied to either the student or a parent account would be a good feedback data that the school can be collecting. A lot of schools already definitely at the higher levels of education use that kind of system where the feedback of the students is taken. So that's something that we should certainly be using that. There are other, obviously, when that happens, the board has, in terms function is really policy making. The superintendent and the principals should be following process where they work with the teacher to understand why they're not following process. In extreme cases, the board can start tenure charges. I mean, that's a pretty extreme situation, but that's something that is well within the scope of things that can be done. But I think it starts with feedback that is tied to email account that can provide anonymous feedback here.
All right, thank you. Jennifer.
Yeah, so I mean, starting with, first off, teachers are humans, right? I mean, I think having open communication lines is key. Parents should know how to escalate this, right? So the escalation goes first, you try and discuss this with the teacher. If that doesn't work, you go about that to the principal, and if the principal cannot help, you go up. But there is this fear of retaliation. I know it. I know many parents who worry about it. You have your most precious, your kids, and you don't want to upset the teacher. So people are worried about raising these concerns. More like if this is something that actually could be handled more by the class parents. So I don't necessarily know the full role of the class parent in our schools, but in my previous school, when my daughter was much younger and I was a class parent, I actually did handle anonymous feedback from parents about certain concerns, and I relayed that to the teachers. So that's maybe potentially one way that we could handle it. But I think anonymity is key, right? Making sure that parents can voice their opinions without retaliation. And we should also be looking at why parents should feel, if it's a constructive, feedback. Maybe parents in the workplace, we have these 360s that we do, where we write this kind of anonymous feedback, maybe incorporating something like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, great. We got Viswa back too. You're not up yet, but I got distracted looking for you. So glad you made it back.
I was worried. I was like, Fisco got kicked off.
There we go. So
Literally.
great. And let's get started for Cynthia. And Cynthia, you're next.
All right. So yes, it is important to know there is sort of a chain of command here, right? You know, the teachers are being evaluated by supervisors, principals, you know, so, you know, I think, again, you first go through your chain of command. If there is a problem, the best thing to do, just the same thing if you have a problem with your neighbor, is to reach out and talk in person first, right? And email and put it out there. Keep those lines of communication open. So if that doesn't work, then you go up. Yes, you go to the supervisor or the principal. And if you really needed to, you could go to Christine Burton, because I know that she's always, you know, open to that. And I think that, you know, anonymously, you know, I know people are worried about retribution. I know there are whistleblower laws for business. I mean, maybe, you know, there could be some kind of, you know, whistleblower, you know, policy in the schools that, you know, that could be implemented. Maybe that's something that the board could even work on, just to protect everyone. I think it's really important because everyone is a player in the game, you know, and the teachers don't want to feel demonized, but if they're not doing their job, then I agree, something needs to be done. So I think also being able to reach out to a Board of Ed member is important, because obviously we are the liaisons between the community and the students. So I think that's just another sort of role thing that we can do.
All right. Thank you. Kris.
Yes, Cynthia beat me to this one. Whistleblower is absolutely the right way to go when you have fear of retaliation, which I think is a big concern in our school, and I'm so glad this question came up. I've implemented several whistleblower policies and systems in the companies that I've worked for. So usually the way it works is you actually contract with a third-party service, so people can phone, text, email, their personal information gets stripped out, and the message gets forwarded. We add a routing system. Do you want it to go to the board of directors? Do you want it to go to management? Do you want it to go somewhere else? We set up special committees to get this data, distill it down, and get it to the right people. So we did have a direct line to the board of directors for whistleblowers. I think that would be a great thing to investigate here.
All right. Thank you. Viswa, 60 seconds for follow-up.
Thank you, John. Just to elaborate on my previous comments, right? Not every parent would be comfortable going and speaking directly to the teacher, to the principal. Clearly, the mechanism for anonymity is as needed in that situation. But I think we also need to be careful as parents. I can't be calling up this line if the teacher does not take 2 extra days to respond to my email. I think that we need to strike the right balance. And definitely, the corporations have done a pretty good job at it. Learning from those whistleblower laws and processes would be very helpful.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Right. So I think the last part that I was going to add is I like this whistleblower idea actually, but and in addition to that, maybe some kind of 360 feedback that we kind of have similar to the workplace, where those parents who want to, it doesn't have to be everybody, but it could be an anonymous feedback mechanism. Once a year, the parents can write things, or even once a quarter or semester, and maybe push that information that then somebody could either normalize or feed it directly, depending on maybe normalize it and let the teachers see that feedback, the honest feedback, but without it constantly being bombarded to them. Maybe package it up once a year or once a semester.
Thank you. Cynthia.
sorry, I'm getting distracted by my cat. Okay, so one of the big things, actually one of my three, I think one of the big things to know, and especially, having some kind of open line to the Board of Ed, is that the Board of Ed takes an oath, and all student and staff members are confidential. So, that seems to be like a very good way to go about this. If you've gone through the chain of command, you haven't gotten some of the answers that you want. The Board of Ed members do take that oath, and they are not allowed to speak of students or staff in any of that. So that seems to be like a pretty safe way to go about that for a parent who's really struggling to get heard. So that's why.
All right, thank you. And Kris.
So I believe in both the carrot and the stick approach. The board of directors is primarily responsible for writing policy, which is oftentimes the enforcement arm. So that's the stick approach. How do we think about this situation and offer carrots? I've been pleasantly surprised that I've been talking to many parents about how they engage with their teachers, first via email, and if they didn't get resolution, they'd often go in and sit down with the teachers or escalate to the next level through the chain of command and ultimately sit down with someone and get resolution brought to their issue. I was surprised by how many times that happened, and that makes me feel real good. How do we incentivize that behavior if that's the behavior that we want? That teachers are willing to engage with the parents, that parents need to keep pressing until they get the answers they need. We have to be able to find these stories, promote them, obviously not the details, just the fact that it can happen, and reward them to let everyone know that this is a valid process, it will work.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for your thoughtful responses on this question. Moving on, Jennifer, you're going to be the first for this question. All students, regardless of their skill level, make mistakes. It is widely recognized that learning from these mistakes is an excellent way to learn. Many or some teachers at the middle school and high school do not allow students to take their assessment home for thorough review. Some teachers will give it back briefly in class and then collect it at the end of that class. Some teachers allow the students to review it quickly during office hours. Some teachers do allow a student to write down the question that they got wrong, but not all of them. How does this help a student learn, and how can the student avoid making a similar error when the same material comes around again on the midterm or final? Although it is more work for the teachers, should the district put policies and/or regulations in place that require quizzes, assessments, and writing assignments be returned to the students in a timely manner? So that was a pretty long one. Did everybody get that question? I think at the end of the day, I'll just repeat the final part of the question because I think that's the key. Although it is more work for the teachers, should the district put policy and/or regulations in place that require quizzes, assessments, and/or writing assignments be returned to the student in a timely manner?
So I think this goes back to the uniformity issue that we addressed earlier. I think educating the teachers. So first, start with hiring the right people, right? So we hire really awesome people. You don't want to have too much policies so that they cannot, do their job effectively. Maybe at a higher grade where, maybe in high school it matters much, but definitely at elementary school, middle school, we don't want to have over policies where the teacher is afraid to do anything. So I think hiring the right teachers and then potentially training them, right? Like giving them advice on, look, here's what all the third grade teachers should do, and I think going back to the point of whether we should allow the students to learn from mistakes, absolutely. I think that's how humans learn. I mean, we make mistakes, we learn, and learning from our mistakes makes us better. So I think it's important that, teachers understand that and, not retaliate against students making mistakes, allow students to review their tests. Some ideas that work really well is allowing students to correct their own mistakes, or oftentimes peer grading helps as well. But these are things that I think teachers can use their creativity. If it's really not working out, we need to look at it case by case and dive into that case.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have 60 more seconds on this question. Cynthia.
Yeah, I like to present sort of, always a little bit of balance. I'm sort of thinking, why don't they let them do it? Because I have a student in the middle school, but I haven't had a student. I don't have a student yet in the high school. I'm sort of thinking maybe teachers think there's an issue with cheating or sharing tests, and if everyone hasn't taken a test. So I'm just trying to sort of see the other side of that, because I wasn't aware that that was happening. However, I do agree. I mean, when I took my recertification exam, the way that I studied was with a practice test. And a practice test, had why every answer was correct, or why the answer was correct and why the other ones were not correct. So I do think that there could be some work done on this, and especially at the board level, potentially like, another policy. Maybe there could be a practice test that's not the test. Maybe there could be, other ways to go about it. Especially if a teacher's using the same test in multiple sections, or waiting till everyone is done. But I feel like there's got to be a solution, and it's something that I feel like I would be a good person to work on, just being both a parent and a teacher in that role. That's my short answer.
All right, thank you. Kris.
This has been one of my biggest pain points with the district. I struggle to understand what my child is getting wrong. And even when she goes and sits down with the teacher, reviews the test, the way it's been communicated back to me, I don't always get the full story. So as a parent, seemingly this answer is easy. Yes, absolutely, the kids should take home their tests. It's a very inefficient and, in my mind, ineffective process, what we're doing now. However, as a board member, I don't want to have my personal opinion take over that decision. I don't know the other side of the story. Like the common sense things, this, how much harder on teachers is this? Are there ways that we can rotate through the questions so we don't have problems? I realize the same section takes tests on different days, so any material going home is a challenge. So I can't completely answer this question. Typical, the way I would make any decision is understand what data is available. If it's not readily available, over what time frame can we gather that data? Make a decision on when we're going to make a decision using what data, and move forward on that. But in general, I think this problem needs to be solved, and more information needs to go home in a more timely manner.
All right, thank you. Viswa.
John, my kids find this maddening. Anytime they get something wrong, I ask them, how do you do this better? I think that's a fundamental way how you better yourself, how you make improvements and understand in your understanding of anything, right? But I think if you go back to why the teachers might be doing this, there are a couple of reasons. I don't think it's comprehensive, but certainly having teacher friends and stuff at various levels, it gives me a little bit of insight. One is just having to redo give new set of questions, new set of problems. In some cases, it's easy. Some cases, it's really hard to do that. The other piece here is just the headache of dealing with if somebody changes it's an answer and brings it back, like how do you deal with that situation? Or maybe the memory that you have of what the answer is different from what you're seeing when in the sheet is brought back, right? There are practical difficulties to what the teachers face. I think in some cases, I think technologies like, say, IXL could help frame newer and newer problems for the teacher so that they don't have to be burdened. So it's a problem that needs to be explored more before we make it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Okay. look, the board should be separate. The board's interest should be separate from the teacher's interest. Yes, we need to understand, but our biases should not guide the board decision. We cannot be telling the teachers, almost micromanaging the teachers on how to do their jobs, but I think you hire good people, you expect them to do the right thing. I think looking at the other side, I mean, there might be a reason why teachers in high school don't give the test back, because they probably repeat the test year after year. So one idea might be you can have better, peer reviews, students grading each other's. If that doesn't work, you can have peer tutors. You can, the teachers can offer more office hours, where the students can go meet. So, I think there should be no stigma for a student going to a teacher at office hours. There should be longer office hours available, and the students should know about it and make use of it. And I think that's kind of how we could potentially solve this.
All right, and thank you. We had a 90-second timer and you kept to your 60 seconds. So let's switch over to the 60 seconds for the final three. Sorry about not identifying that, Andrea.
Oh, sure.
So on to Cynthia.
Okay, so obviously student achievement is paramount. That's what we want. We want our students to be successful and learning and moving forward. So again, I think if I was on the board, I would be looking at policy. I think there is a student assessment policy, and just evaluate how that is being done now, what the rules of that are, and how it can improve going forward.
All right. Thank you. Kris. Unmute for Kris.
Sorry about
Thank
that. In general, I'm very happy with our school district, but if I took a real critical eye to how my daughter's experience has been, particularly in the high school, I think we cover a lot of material in a short time frame. There's a lot of rote memorization, and there's an over-reliance on assessments as a portion of the grade. So kind of two thoughts tangential to this topic. If there is a harder science subject like math or science, that is a lot of memorization. So what if the tests go home? You know what the material is, you just have to do a lot of memorization. That shouldn't be a factor. Secondly, probably more of a long-term thing, are we relying too much on assessments? Can there be other forms that enhance the grades? Therefore, the assessments going home aren't as big a deal because they aren't a large portion of the grade.
All right. Thank you. And Viswa.
So John, on this I gotta differ with Kris. The hardest sciences are actually easier. What I was going to suggest was based on and the kind of subject that is being taught. This actually makes it easier in some cases to give different sort of questions every year. Math, and physics, chemistry, these things are actually a lot more easy. It takes work on the part of the teacher, and that can be alleviated with some of the technologies that are available, right? What do we do with some of the other more descriptive, some of those responses that need more descriptive answer? We need evaluation to make sure that the kids are understanding what they're being taught. So that's a necessary evil part of education, right? What do we do with the other ones? Those, I think, I don't have an answer right now. It's something that I would definitely want to explore.
All right, thank you. Sherry and Andrea, if you're okay with it, I'd like to move the next question to 60 seconds instead of 90, just due to time. So just for everyone, so we can get at least one more question in, possibly two. I'm gonna shorten the time period for the next question, or possibly two questions.
With a 45-second response?
We can keep it to a minute and a minute. Unless, Andrea, if you end up having an easy 45, let us know, but I think a minute is fine too.
I can do 45, it's up to you.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, let's do a minute and then 45 seconds then for this, and possibly one more question. Cynthia, you're going to be first on this question. What are your thoughts on the middle school's block scheduling? And for the high school, there are some parents and student concerns related to the block scheduling that is planned for next year. The current potential plan is to have a rotation of 4 classes per day, and students would be in each class for 82 minutes. 6 classes per day in the block schedule was deemed too short, and an increase the change to a block schedule. Why not 5 classes? If elected, how would you engage with the high school administration and teachers in order to ensure that the transition to the block schedule is managed most effectively for the students? And then just one caveat on that, you would actually be engaging with the superintendent on this and not directly except in possibly a committee format or in presentations with students and principals in your role as a board member. So the basic question is, what do you think about block scheduling? How's it going in the middle school? What are your thoughts about block scheduling in the high school?
Well, I have to admit, as a parent, I was very nervous for my son last year as a 6th grader going in with the 8 or 9, whatever period rotate and drop. That was very intense. It was very hard to organize. I think what they did this year of making it a morning class rotation and an afternoon class rotation at the middle school definitely streamlined it and made it a lot easier for students to keep track of. I do think that it sort of keeps things a little bit more interesting when you're, when your classes are, oh, this is first period today, or oh, this is first period today. It just kind of makes it a little bit just more interesting, I think, in school. I've heard that the high school is going to the 82-minute blocks. I do think that that's a lot. I think that's going to be a lot for students. I think it's going to be a lot for teachers. And I would look forward to discussing this as it's being implemented and being a part of the process to see how we can make it work for everyone.
Thank you. Kris.
I am all for it. I think Mr. Connolly and the administration of the middle school has done a fantastic job in rolling out the block scheduling. Honestly, the first few times I heard it, I was, what? And most parents don't understand it. But you explain it to the kids and they get it. And my feedback from the kids has been great. It seems to have gone really well. And as they moved into year 2, they did change it. And I think this is an approach we need to make. We can analyze things to death. At some point, you just need to do it and adjust, not on the fly. Everything we've done in this block scheduling has been very thoughtful, in my opinion. There was lots of trial runs before they rolled it out to the entire school. And then when they thought of better things, they adjusted the schedule and moved forward that way. I was somewhat disappointed because I thought the high school was supposed to do it this year. So the people who started it in the middle school had a continuation of block scheduling. Now I thought one class was going to go back to normal and then go back to block.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Viswa.
John, I think the current incarnation of block scheduling, I think, is a much better incarnation about block scheduling than the kids initially went through in the middle school. The first version where they were rotating through all the classes every day made it like a really logistically a headache for the kids because they had to figure out what books they need to get. The afternoon and morning schedule, I think, is a much better incarnation. One thing I want to bring to attention is this automatically solves the problem of homework to an extent. And every day you don't have one period, one class, which means that you don't have that homework. So to an extent that that is taken out, and also it gives. Sorry, somebody was talking.
Thank you. Jennifer.
I think there's there's a lot of pros and to block scheduling. I heard in the last BOE meeting that I attended that they got very successful feedback from the middle school. They rolled it out to the middle school, and the student liaisons or the student groups that they were getting the feedback from mentioned that students felt that they could get a head start on the homework. There was one less period of homework to do. Maybe in high school, some positives of that could be that the rotating schedule means that certain athletes, when they go to sports, they miss certain classes and they consistently miss those classes. So having those rotating schedules could mean that they miss a different class each time. So those are kind of the pros of it. The downsides that I think that we need to consider, I think, for the high school specifically, is the 82 minutes. I think there's a lot of apprehension. We need to listen to the student body. We need to understand why 82 minutes. Middle school is 57 minutes, I believe. I think that's kind of we need to meet in the middle somewhere.
Thank you. And are we going to do 45 seconds next? Are we good for that? So we have 45 seconds for each of you for follow-up comments. With Cynthia, you're next. And Cynthia's on mute.
Oh,
so we
sorry,
might.
I didn't realize I was up first. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so what I do understand is that studies show that block scheduling works. It is effective, and the students learn well in that format. I know kids are more resilient than we are as parents most of the time, and they do adapt to these things very well. So, I think that potentially, as this is going to be implemented, holding forums, letting the parents and the students come and speak about their, experiences or their fears in this, it would be a really good opportunity. So just, as it's going through, keeping the lines of communication open and just really working to make it as successful as possible for everyone.
Right. Thank you. Kris.
Yeah, I think we identified the critical issue. It's the length of time in the high school classes. Honestly, I haven't seen the data on it, and I would like to see more of what are the pros of doing it this longer? What are the other options? How much work would it be to reformulate the schedules? All of those things I'd be happy to engage in and help the board and the administration drive to a decision on this. Like any other decision, we have to gather the data, build consensus around us, and then, as all of us are saying, educate, 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 talk to the parents, make sure they're comfortable with these changes, and let's all drive forward together.
Thank you. Viswa.
John, I think the logic itself is sound. I think, especially in high school, some of the class, I think once a week, the class can be fairly long. It might feel daunting, I think, but I think it might be instructionally helpful. We should look at the data as we run this for a year and see how teachers and students take to it, right? As parents, running around in middle school from one class to the next, it feels crazy, but the kids are okay. And the kids will be okay.
All right, thank you. And Jennifer.
Yeah, just talking only about the block scheduling in high school. And just to kind of round out my point, I think there is a lot of apprehension in the student body. I think we need to use our connection with the student liaison committee and try to get more information, exactly what the pain points would be. Maybe have a trial, maybe have a small trial period. I remember they did that in 6th grade, I believe. My daughter was one of the first classes that tried out block scheduling for a very short time, and a lot of apprehensions went away as they went forward. So give it a shot. Nobody likes change, but also understand that we don't want kids. We want what's right for them. They will deal with whatever we throw at them.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And thanks again to our viewers and to our candidates for your willingness to serve our students. We have a few more questions, but in the interest of time, we're going to move on to closing statements so we can wrap this up. by 9. You have 90 seconds as a reminder for your closing statements. And Kris, you're next up on the queue in terms of the rotation. So 90 seconds for closing remarks.
Thank you again, PTOC, for hosting this event. Thank you, John, for moderating. And mostly, thank you, parents, for taking the time on this school night to be a part of this important discussion. And I would encourage you to continue to engage in the discussions with other parents and pass on what you heard tonight. The more people we have involved in this process, the better our district will be. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm actually a very strong introvert. I say very little in social group settings and usually avoid being the center of attention. However, I feel this is one of my greatest strengths, as it means I spend 99% of the time listening, and not just hearing the words, but understanding what people really mean, what they really care about, and connecting with them. If you choose to elect me, I promise that I will listen to parents, listen to teachers, listen to the administrators, and most importantly, listen to our students. Using my skills honed over 20 years as a corporate executive, I have proven that I'm effective at distilling down the information gathered, getting to the root of the issue, surfacing those issues in the right forum, building consensus, and driving toward an outcome. I am deliberate, methodical, and often relentless until these goals are achieved. Please vote on November 8th. Please vote for Kris Heinrichs for Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Viswa.
Thank you, John. Thank you, PTOC, and thank you, parents, for attending this event. The last couple of years have changed the academic environment for our schools and children. COVID is receding, but the other challenges will remain. And the schools are factoring new varieties of new factors in terms of admissions. It's an uncertain environment, and the board needs to take leadership in helping the administration take this challenge head on. Given my 2 decades of product leadership experience, balancing multiple constituencies, parents, students, teachers, universities, it comes naturally to me. I'm in a unique position to help the school system navigate these challenges by working backwards from the customer needs. If elected, I look forward to working on making the school communication more transparent, proactive, and clear, provide greater access and choice for students, and accelerated AP programs to better prepare our kids, and work effectively with the other organizations like Township Committee, Ed Foundation, PTOs, fellow board members, and to enhance the capabilities of the school system. Please vote for me. Viswa, my full name is Viswa Bharat. Reddy, vote 1D in the school election line. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Hi. I love this school district. The teachers are excellent. I truly believe that they really care for our students. The parent community, the PTO, the Ed Foundation, every single person that I come across in this community is so invested in this community. We don't agree on a lot. Sometimes we don't agree on a lot of things, but I think we all agree that the student wellness comes first. I would really like to see people coming together more and finding common ground. When my close friends found out that I was standing for Board of Ed, they smiled, but they understood that one of the things that I do, even if I disagree with people, is I'm good at finding that middle ground. I thought about her statement and I found profoundly simple, right? Many challenges we are facing can be overcome by the spirit of neighbors working together, listening to one another, having respect for each other's views. We have amazing resources in our community, and I think we can tap deeper into that for our well-being of our students. Please vote on November 8th and vote for Jennifer Bhathena. You have to flip the ballot. Our name's on the backside. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cynthia.
Thank you again to the PTOC and to John for hosting this event and including me in it as well. As a writing candidate, I am not on the ballot, but I am the best candidate for the position. As a parent and an educator, I will work to develop win-win situations, digging into the things that we do well as a district, as well as the things that we can do even better. Since I understand the laws and the languages of education, I can best work to make this happen. I will work very hard to keep the lines of communication open through, like I said, the student liaisons, in the community, with the town council, and I'm ready to take on this job. I am the right candidate for the job. So please do, if you need writing in, if you're mailing in your ballot, please flip it over, write in my name and fill in the circle. On the regular ballot, if you're voting in person on the 8th, it will be on the front just as everything else is. But remember, please write in Cynthia Longley Richards and fill in the oval. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks again to all of the candidates, and many thanks to Sherry Mafous, Andrea Spar, Katie Dessau, and Gwen Jonas. Katie and Gwen are doing a bunch of behind the things to make this all seem so nice and smooth. So thank you to them for their behind the scenes magic, and to the Millburn PTO's conference members for your many years of service for our schools and the long-term commitment to hosting BOE candidate forums. Thanks again to all of our participants and viewers. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Make sure to vote.